Sorry. So this actually feels a little silly for me to come here, and I'm sure you're sick and tired of seeing me. This is the third time today that you get to see me, but because it feels silly because I'm about to step down. The reason being is we're going to have Matti Kajansinko from City Planning give you an overview of the planning for Jätkäsaari, to give you a little bit of a broader context for this. And then I will be back for the fourth time. And I will do a somewhat dry but hopefully smooth walk through the request for qualification. And then both Matti and I will be happy to then answer questions. So, Matti, you want to come up here? And what do we do with the microphone for Matti? Should I give this to him? Or you want to give yours? Oh, you got that. Okay. Okay, I'm going away.
Esitys jossain tuolla. Okay. 5 minutes was given to me, so I'm not able to give too long introduction, but anyway, this photograph is already now historic picture because all the containers have disappeared till the end of last year. And some of the buildings has already been demolished, and the railway going to the harbor is under demolition at the moment. And we have done a master plan for Jätkäsaari that was accepted about 3 years ago in the city council. And since that we have been working with the first detail plan, what will be in the political process in a month or two. So the first detail plan is going to be the city government in April and in May to city council. And the site of Sitra will be part of this first detail plan area. This is an image how it maybe looks like in 2025-24 when it's maybe completed. We don't know yet what will be the schedule to complete it all, but we have estimated that it takes some 15 to 20 years. We also have a housing program that some 20% of housing will be on a social base and 40% on free market and 40% in between for the middle class inhabitants. The soil, the ground in the area is mostly artificial. This is a map of Helsinki from 1874, and the black line is more or less the existing shoreline, and this is Jätkäsaari, so about 85% of the land is artificial. And also the old islands have been exploded down, and the estimated soil level is about 2.5 meters above the sea level. A model of the master plan, this has also been in the wind tunnel, so Jätkäsaari is a very, very windy corner. This from southwest, the direction of the wind when it's heaviest is when it's storming, and we are accepted. We are willing to do a housing area where everybody is able to walk home every day of the year. And that's quite a task to do. And the site of Sitra is in a more quiet corner, very close to the existing city structure, to Ruoholahti area. It's a whole block. The building right is 22,000 square meters, of which 8,000 is for for office purposes and 800 for shops. And it's surrounded by a collector street and also by a park. This is the park network, which is it's in the middle of the area, and the reason why it's formed like this is mostly wind. So the most difficult direction of the wind is not able to blow in the middle of the park. And also the idea we have been discussing about car-free Jätkäsaari, which means that in our case how we have read it is that we have a very large car-free zone. These are the collector streets in the area, and the area in between is in practice totally car-free. We have some local streets in the area, but the traffic in those streets is quite limited. And there are pedestrian bridges covering these, or going over these larger streets. And tram lines, at the moment we will have 2 tram lines, plus 1 tram line traveling Ruoholahti when it's all completed. And the idea is that there's never longer distance from a tram stop longer than 300 meters. And as I told in the beginning, when it's really wind is very heavy, it's blowing from southwest, which is the surface of the area in this edge here. And finally, this is the area of the first detail plan. The site of Sitra is this here. Marriott American Hotel has reserved a very large site with 33,000 square meters in the corner, and there will be a 16-story high tower in the corner. There's another tower on the other side of the gate coming into the area, which is as high as for it. There's no reservation for this hotel yet. These magazines designed by Lars Sonck, a famous Finnish architect of his time, already have a building permission, but construction has not yet started. This old building from the 30s and 50s was in the use of the labor of the harbor, but now the part from the 50s is turning into a fire station, and the 2-story high is going to be the info center of our project. HOAS, which is a student housing company in Finland, in Helsinki especially, is organizing a competition of these 4 towers here in the corner. And the reservation to build has been accepted in the city government of this area, and this will be mostly residential. There is a bunker which is existing very, very large storage building, which is going to be a sports center just beside a sports park. We have a requirement in a detail plan that there is need to be shops all along the street facade, especially the collector street facade, and we believe that there is really business for these shops because the density is so high that we have about 1,000 people living in each 4 block altogether. Thank you.
Can I get this? Yeah. I don't know if you want to maybe, if somebody has questions, we'll have a chance to answer more questions at the end, but maybe if there's some questions right now for Matti. So why don't we move maybe to the RFQ, and then we can take questions both on the RFQ and about city planning. Thank you, Matti. All right. So I believe I go on the next little click here. Okay, thank you. So So these look familiar, I'm pretty sure, right? Anyhow, so I'm just going to go very quickly through this, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to open our website, and then I will pull out the RFQ. And I'm not going to read the RFQ for you, but I'm going to basically section by section highlight some of the key things. And then we can, if you have questions, feel free to ask, and you can also interrupt. I'm fine with that. So let me try to stress what we're trying to do with the competition. We're not trying to, the process is not designed to provide solutions. We have a process in place that is just trying to identify the best teams with the best mix of experience. And what we're going to ask them to do is to develop an approach. What's your strategy for solving this? And the more traditional design aspect of this will happen later on. The first challenge for us is actually to find the competencies, the right mix of competencies. And in that sense, as I mentioned before, this know-how is somewhat in its infancy when put in context with other know-how in the building sector. So we felt the only way to do this is to make this an international competition, and we hope that this call for requests for qualifications will be heard in Finland as well as beyond its borders, and hopefully even partnerships across the border. Low to no, it means we're looking for sustainable solutions that have the potential to be replicable, that can address the problem in a systemic manner. Given we're in Finland, we hope we can leverage the small scale, think of it as an opportunity perhaps to prototype things at an almost within a national context. But the key is to find solutions that are implementable and that can get us to where we need to go. I'm going to just go over this very briefly now, and then I'll pull up the RFQ. There are basic aspects, attributes that the teams are going to have to respond to, which are in number one. And then we would expect that, for example, if you have a team, it'd probably be in your best interest to have some understanding about climate, a perspective on energy policy, because these issues are all interconnected, as we have heard in the morning session. And then because of the nature of this problem and the fact that it's still in its infancy, we're actually going to rely on the teams to suggest what other competencies should be included in this. And so we'll look at the array of team members and experiences that come. And let me just stress, because this came up in one of the questions, which I thought was a good question, we don't expect everybody to have a tremendous track record in sustainability at any one of these. One of the key principles for us is that teams need to be able to demonstrate their ability to think systemically. How does this thing affected by this other thing, affected by these other things at different scales in different sectors? That is a kind of prerequisite in terms of thinking abilities. You have to be able to demonstrate that. This is the schedule, and I'll pull this up through the RFQ, but let me also be clear. I think there are some questions about whether there's a long or short competition. The RFQ is just, you're going to announce your team. That's what we're looking for. We are not putting a lot of stipulations on how you do that. We're just putting a length to the document and some prerequisite information on the front cover, which I'll explain in just a little bit. You have a little over 3 weeks to do that. Once you submit that, we will select fairly quickly up to 5 teams that we think are well qualified to respond. And they will get then a competition brief, and they will have about 2 months, not to provide a solution, but an approach. And in early September, we'll announce both the winners, and then we'll start an implementation of this. And these are what the 5 teams will be asked in that 2 months to do, is design a strategy, an indicator, and a vision. So, said that, I am going to do this. And this is our website. So if you go to lowtono.org, it will automatically route you to /competition. And there are a series of things that you can see here, which is an introduction, or is a bit of a preamble to why we're doing this competition. You'll see things like challenges, the process, the site, about us, frequently asked questions, resources, and then the webcast. So we'll go to the resources, and by the way, on the webcast portion here, you will be able to see the material from this seminar. The video will be available later on for viewing. We will also have a Q&A session where people can submit questions and we'll respond to them. But let's go to the resources. There we go. And let me just point to a few things you'll see here. RFQ, request for qualification. This is the document, if you're interested in submitting your team, you will need to read. There are competition overview, which is an informational brochure. I think most of you have it in your package today, but this is a PDF version. We have competition rules, and then we have links to some things that we think might be of general information for teams putting together. And then we have a general question. As I said, later on we'll have a formal Q&A session that opens up. But let me go over here, and we'll open up this document here. And let's make it small. So I think this is quite familiar. We're trying to, in a way, capture the essence of what we're trying to look for here. This is a basic here. This first portion, invitation and background, is basically why we're doing it. A couple things to note. If you get selected, if you're one of the maximum of 5 teams that gets the brief and the task of developing a strategy and approach to solving this problem, you will be asked to come here for 2-3 days in early June, so you need to prepare to do that. And what we will do is, in a way, provide you a mini course, for lack of a better word, that will hopefully give you enough context and information to start developing your work. We'll also give you access to the system here in terms of understanding energy policy, construction practices, and these kinds of issues. We're also hoping that in that short period of time, rather intense, that teams can take a bit of a charrette mentality to the work and in a way produce before they leave some ideas of where they're going with their design process. That then leaves them an extra month after this meeting to actually begin to refine. The reason for the charrette, when charrette is basically a very short, intensive design exercise, is not so much to propose something that is what you're going to do, but for us and the teams to have a dialogue about where the solutions are going. The charrette portion of this and the communication about it will be done one-on-one with teams, so as to avoid any kinds of conflicts between teams not necessarily feeling comfortable with disclosing. But the rest of the activities will be shared. We will provide for those up to 5 teams 50,000 euros. Which, without getting into too many details, you will get once you submit your proposal at the end on July 1st. And in a way, this is in the realization that to actually put some solid, hard thinking together, that actually requires some monetary investment. So we recognize that. And I think in some teams' cases, depending on their potential geographic location, that probably doesn't even cover the actual cost. But we do want to, in a way, come forward and actually help support the kind of investment that's required. We will also cover, just so you know, all in-country expenses. So teams should prepare for those that are going to be selected to be in Helsinki for that early June period. And then when the competition winner, and I lose that let me explain that in a second. When the winner is announced in early September, we are going to ask for the 5 teams to come back. And let me explain that a little bit, why 5 teams and not 1 team. As I said, there are 3 things we're going to ask the teams to develop. A design strategy. How would you even start approaching this problem? A framework for an indicator. How would you start thinking about how you measure sustainability in this context? And thirdly, which is probably, as I mentioned, a simpler task, is give us some visual clue of where these approaches actually, what they could materialize into. It's not a promise that it will look like that, but it's something that people can have some focus around. We recognize competitions produce a lot of good insight. And unfortunately, there is a kind of, I don't want to call it zero sum, but there is unfortunately a lot of that good knowledge in traditional competitions is perhaps lost, because of the fact that you have to select a single winner. So let me run out through a potential scenario. We may select 1 team to, in a way, provide the design services for our block. We may actually ask the 5 teams to come together and create a consortia around developing an indicator. So what we want to do is to be able to leverage the best of the teams, still respecting the fact that some single entity is going to have to design this in the long term. So we want the 5s to come in to continue a process as opposed to end the process. So 50,000 is the euro sum in terms of remuneration, all in country for the workshop, and for the September dates, in country expenses will be covered. And then for teams, up to 6,000 euros in travel will be reimbursed. Those are the monetary issues. Scope of services, the lot right now is about 7,100 square meter lot. That I believe translates to about 3/4 of a hectare. And right now the building allowance is for 22,000 square meters. We have included not a budget because we're too early in the process for that. And in fact, we're asking the teams to help us define how would you put the strategy together. But what we've given is a bit of a benchmark from the past of what is, generally speaking, a finished building cost standard. And I'm sure teams can do their own homework and think about where this may or may not place itself. The required skills and experience section I won't go through because I think I've captured it in a couple times in the 1, 2, 3 diagram that I've spoken about. There's submittal content, sustainable system design experience. And so here we're being quite broad. It could be not in the building sector, but in the energy sector. But we want you to be able to describe that. Evidence of working problems at a systemic level. These are some of the things we hope to see in your submittals. Examples of recent work that is relevant or demonstrate capacity for complex problem solving. As you can see, we're defining these fairly broadly because we want to be inclusive. Yet we want to bring enough of a focus so we don't get too wide a spread of issues. And examples of projects with high architectural, spatial, and social value. I think when you hear discussions around the topic of sustainability, quickly, and rightfully so, the discussion migrates to issues about economy, about infrastructure, about energy, about policy. We want to make sure that the architectural component is not, in a way, secondary to these. The challenge here is to bring synthesis between these issues, still maintaining a high standard and quality of architecture. So that's why we put that in there. Let me go to page 3. So what are going to be the evaluation for the teams? We're not talking about the proposals. We're talking about on the 22nd of April when you submit your team qualifications. The process of selection, the 5 teams that then go forward, are based on basically 3 categories. The quality of the team, the experience of the team members, and the evidence of systemic thinking. And in there, I won't go into all the details, but we try to give some indication of how we define quality of the team. And the experience of the team. And evidence of systemic thinking. You may have people who are highly qualified, have a lot of experience, but haven't really done work that requires sort of systemic thinking, broad-scale integration of multiple things. On the other hand, you can have teams that have a lot of evidence of great systemic thinking, but the quality of the team is fairly weak. Or actually, there is no real experience. So we're trying to find a balance here, and hence that's reflected in the point system over there. Submittal procedures, and then we're coming to a close here. This is a fairly short request for qualifications. In fact, when we were doing a little of our homework, we saw anything from, in terms of precedents for requests for qualification, anything from 1 paragraph to 100 pages. We want it to be not prescriptive, but descriptive in terms of our objectives and to the point. So the last portion is the submittal procedures. Is a document. We put a length limit to it. Submittal is 30 sheets or less, double-sided. We need some things that are sort of scripted out for you. A cover to the submittal, 1 to 2 pages. 300-word provocation we want you to include in there. So let me explain that. In the US, we have a term called elevator pitch. And the idea of an elevator pitch is when you get into the elevator with your boss, you only have 3 or 4 floors to explain a great idea. So we want you to have the ability to just, in simple terms, frame an issue that you think is pertinent that will help us evaluate your proposal. Right? So there's a little bit of a space for you to put a statement in there. So 300-word provocation expressing approach and values. Then we need a list of principal leaders of firms with synoptic descriptions. So you're going to identify that our team, the core of our team, are these 4 members or 4 groups coming together, represented by these individuals. Who are they? And give us a little synopsis, right? Just a brief description. And then we want one team leader who's going to be your contact person. This will be the person who will receive information about whether you've been accepted as one of the 5 competition entries, and that will be the person that we'll maintain communication for. So you can see it's not very prescriptive. There's certain kind of information we want. We put a length to it, so you're going to have to edit this yourself. But however you do it, as long as you respond to these issues, we're happy with that. And the submittal, the second portion of it, then after this cover of 1 to 2 pages, is a list of relevant projects. What do you think demonstrates the quality of the work you've done, the kind of work you've done, and perhaps reflects some of your own experience? Select a project shown in detail, so perhaps you want to then focus on 1 or 2, perhaps. And then abbreviated CVs of sort of key team members. It's pretty straightforward, I hope. Right? The schedule is repeated there. And then let me just see over here. We have a general email for this competition, which is available through the site. So when you go to resources, there is contact us. And it's simply competition@sitra.fi. There's the website. There's an upload section. So if you want to upload your documents, you can do that. And it's a secure upload. And then we just put a diagram to not lose track of what we hope can be the outcomes of this. So at the end, when we've selected a team to work, we will ask them to design a solution for our block, or help design a solution for the block, that then needs to be put into this context, that then we hope can impact how we think about development. And I think with that, have I covered just about everything? No? Okay. So I'm done. And now I'm happy to take questions, either from Matti about perhaps some questions about city planning, or about the RFQ process, then the competition process with the 5 teams, or about anything related to the overall process. There's a microphone. Hold on 1 second so we can hear. Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Is it okay? Yes. One question, who is we? You are talking about we are happy to have you competing with but who makes the qualification and who are the members of jury?
Okay, that's a very important question. The jury comes into play when we actually have given teams a brief to then deliver on. So that happens after the request for qualification. The request for qualification is really just a screening process, so we can keep this open. We can seek input from around the world on this and get hopefully the best of the best. So there's, in a way, 2 decisions that happen. One is with the RFQ, which is based on a point. And when I speak about we, it's a Sitra team that will look at the applications in terms of these as the teams, and then we will, based on those point systems, award points and rank them, and then decide up to 5 teams that then actually get the competition brief. At that point, the competition brief will be made available, and the jury will be made available. We hope to make the jury available just for public knowledge sooner rather than later. And then the 5 teams that are working off of the brief and asked to deliver the 3 deliverables, which is a strategy, an indicator, and a vision, that will be due July 1st, and the jury will evaluate that. And that's an international jury with a multidisciplinary makeup. I hope that helps answer the question. I know that this has come up a couple times. Right? For the screening of the RFQ, it's a Sitra team. For evaluating the proposals, it's a traditional jury. And that will be made available publicly. There's a question over there.
Thank you. I'm just curious if the block of this competition is located within the car-free zone or not? And what does it mean exactly?
Do you want to? It should be working.
Is it working? Yeah, okay. There have been some articles in the newspapers, and the deputy mayor has been talking about car-free blocks, but no decision of single block has not been done. So far, in the detailed plan, there is a requirement of parking, which is one parking place for each 125 square meters, plus minus 20% if there are some rental apartments in the block. So and a special other numbers for offices and shops. But I think the political decision about car-free blocks, totally car-free blocks, will be done during the spring. So before this competition is due, so we will know better. And parking is a very strictly political question. It's not up to our planning.
There was, I think, also a question further down here.
Yes, I'd like to ask about the transportation. What is the importance of transportation in your list in desired team competencies? We noticed that Jätkäsaari is already designed quite far. It's the transportation systems are somehow in process. Is there any possibilities to have an impact on those things? And another question, continuing the earlier question, you said that Sitra team is going to choose the 5 teams. So can we know the names who are in that jury, in the pre-jury?
Okay, let me try to answer both questions. I can't answer for the city in terms of decisions that have been made or that will be made. All I can say is that what we seek is a holistic approach to the problem. So we think it is important to have a transportation understanding in there, regardless of whether decisions have or have not been made. And rather than limit ourselves right now in how we frame the problem, I would encourage teams to be as open in terms of how one might actually design and organize solutions at this point in time. In terms of the Sitra team, I believe we will make that available. It's not right now available, but we can put that. Jukka's looking at me like, yeah, okay. And I hope there's nothing mysterious to it. We have certain basic criteria that we're posting in terms of how we define experience in these 3 categories, and we will apply those in adjudicating points to the team. But we will respond to this desire to see the individuals on there. On the RFQ, it is mentioned that it is a Sitra team that will be reviewing these.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how the process will continue after the competition has been done and this one of the teams is more winner than the other?
Yeah, I like the more winner than the other. And perhaps winning is we should come up with a slightly different term. I wish I could. I mean, we certainly have ideas, and let me tell you what our thinking right now is. We have been developing a process by which we can actually identify the right skill sets to help us frame what the problem is. Parallel to that, we've been working with our construction development partners, and we will be bringing those 2 together in September. We hope that shortly after we can come together to an agreement in terms of the makeup of those skill sets and get into construction. Our target right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jukka, is 2012 we could all go and open the front door of, or if the front doors, or whatever the solution may have, to the block. So we have an objective in terms of a time frame. We have the idea that there's a development and a design component that we're going to bring together. But I can't give you any real specific details beyond that at this point in time. Jukka was just saying, I mean, to say it more succinctly, the idea is to hire the design team between September and December. Yes?
I'm Samuel Woolston from Ala Architects. I was just going to ask you maybe to expand a little bit on the indicators, because presumably you'd be looking for something that would be relevant outside this single city block, perhaps as a more general tool for assessing built projects, or is this really referring to this particular block as such?
Yeah. Let me try to do my best, and perhaps I've been in an academic environment too long, and my answer won't be as direct as you hope. I've been doing a lot of work in healthcare. I'm just going to give you a quick example. And the problem in healthcare is that we don't even know what the problem is. So we actually have to start defining what the problem is. What we're seeking through this competition here is actually for help on how do we define the problem. How do we define it from a design strategy perspective? How do we define it from an indicator strategy? So what you bring up, I think, is a very relevant question, and it comes back to the question of scale for us. At what scale do these indicator issues operate? But that's where we're seeking. I'm not competent in a way to answer that question. We're seeking teams that then will be selected from the RFQ to actually begin to answer. That's why I use the term framework. We don't expect the process to deliver an answer, but at least help us to begin to frame how one might approach an indicator. Over there.
I have a kind of a technical question about the teams. As I understand, there will be at least two kind of members of the teams. They're so-called key team members, and then there could be assistants or experts. And because we are in Finland is short of certain knowledge about this subject, that's why the competition is international. So, but anyway, it's possible that there will be teams with let's say shared experts. That means that there will be different teams who are pre-qualifying or trying to get into this competition, and they are they're asking for an expert to join their team. Can this expert be a member in more than one team? On the other hand, it's a question of a person, or it's a question of a company. A company can have different persons in different teams. That's also an alternative. What's your
I think that's obviously a very important and key question. Let me come back to your first comment. Why we're making this international. I think we recognize that this know-how is in its infancy. So it's not a question about Finland not having the know-how. There's a lot of fabulous know-how in Finland. But it would be just as silly for us to say we're going to run this competition just in the US. It would be limiting the same way. So I think in this day and age, because these issues are global, and because it's at an infancy, we owe it to the solution to open this up as much as possible. To come to your second question in terms of individuals or organizations that may or may not be in more than one RFQ response. And bear with me, because I hope what you get out of it today is the spirit of the competition and not too much of preoccupations for the rules in a kind of I'm filing my taxes manner, but more of what are we striving with the objectives. Key core members of your team are individuals, and they have to be in one team. So you cannot have, I don't know, the leader of one proposal being the leader of another proposal, or sort of one of the key competencies at an individual level being in one proposal and then being on the other proposal. This doesn't, on the other hand, limit the possibility that an organization may have one individual represented in one competition and another individual represented in another competition. As you'll see in the RFQ, I believe, and if not, we'll be posting it in the Q&A, we do ask, in the spirit of transparency, that organizations that have individuals in different teams be transparent about it. And I know how the dynamic of teams work. Most teams don't like having another member in another team. But if that's fine with the team members, that's fine. But individuals cannot be in two teams. Now, there is a second tier, which is not the core, is a more at a kind of general consultancy level to that team. So you may say, this is our core here, and we may rely on this network of individuals that bring some know-how. That's less of a critical issue at that point, because that's not the core of your team. That's not the team that's going to be responding. But I don't know if this distinction between individual and organization helps in answering this question. Any other questions? About the weather? No? Should we call it quits? So, as I said, I would like to just maybe summarize this in here. Let me just put it this way. I was trained as an architect, and I never knew that I would be spending so much time doing things other than architecture. And so one of our delights has been spending a lot of time in legal processes and so on. And one of the things is, I will use the term, but we were told that it's really not applicable to this. But think of this as a two-phase. There's a first phase, which is an RFQ, and that ends April 22nd. Early May, there's a second phase to this. Up to five teams will be in that phase. They will get a brief. They will have an international jury. And they will have until July 1st to deliver on this. I hope that you will all interpret the spirit of the competition and respond to the spirit of the competition. Thank you.
So, thank you all. So, carefully read those guidelines we have on the website, and we will answer to your questions later on through email. And Tuula Laitinen, communication manager of energy program, is one of the key persons, and Marko and Justin and me, and of course Juha Kostiainen in energy team is also heavily involved in this process, but he couldn't unfortunately come here today.
Can I just say one thing?
Yes, please.
Sorry. Number 5. I just wanted to make sure you said we'll respond to questions you have by email.
Yeah.
We will respond. We'll make our responses public. So I want people to understand that whatever questions comes are going to be shared with everybody.
Yes.
Simple clarification.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, and thank you very much for participating this afternoon session, and we're looking forward getting your RFQs and other contacts. Thank you so much.